help me out and try to correct me where I make mistakes. I told him try to do it quiet, little corrections. I'm kind of like the voice of doom, so enjoy my world. Right here is a graph, and it is showing you what it is to have hypothermia. Now, you know, hypothermia is when you wind up, your body temperature drops. Now, normally body temperature is about what, 98.6 roughly? If it gets down to 84.2, at that point, it's all over. You're not going to survive. And the colder water is what they call a heat sink. It absorbs heat very, very rapidly and takes in a lot of it. And so when you're out on the water, and people don't think about this, it's really important that you make sure you're prepared. Now, one of the things we wear, we go out, and this little thing is only cost about $1,600 or so. And the nice thing about it is it floats. So you don't need to have a life jacket per se. You have this instead. But the difference is, we're not allowed to go out any temperature below 50. And we have to wear, from 50 to 60 degrees, we have to wear one of these things. People don't like it. My crew keeps on complaining, oh, we gotta have this on. Well, when the water's 50 degrees when you're out there, all of a sudden after about 30 minutes you're going, you know, this is really pretty nice now. Now, the nice thing about it too, in some ways, is if the temperature of the water is 40, you fall in, you have approximately 20 to maybe 40 minutes before you're in hypothermia. And I'm talking about where you cannot even lift up your hands or anything like that. Now, how many people die of hypothermia? Anybody have any idea? Probably 5%. They don't die of the hypothermia. What they do is as they go into a coma, their head goes in the water and they drown. And so that's where everything happens. Once you get down cold enough, you lose all sense of where you're on. You go into a coma and then you're drowned. Now, the vests that they have, like the Navy has for way offshore, they have these heavy-duty, awkward life jackets, and they have a collar on them, and it keeps their head up, and it flips them up so they keep their head above the water. We don't wear that. You know how we have ours. We got the little fancy ones, usually of a very dark color, blue or black, because it blends so nicely with the water. And of course, if you happen to have it on, which most people don't, well, you know, what the heck? You know, at least you'll be floating for a while, all right? So real important. Right now, the water temperature, I checked, what was it, 2 weeks ago, it was at about 43 degrees. So I'm thinking, all those people, if they went in the water, even if they had a life jacket on, you're talking time right then, 30, 40 minutes, and you're going to be kind of toast. I mean, maybe it'll pull you out, you may be able to revive you, maybe. But once it gets in your body core gets down to about, as I said, about 84 degrees, the chances of you being revived are just about zero. So, really important. Right now, water temperature really rose over the past couple of weeks. It's now, I checked, and it's at 56. So at 56, think about it. Right now, if you take a look at this chart, don't worry. You have somewhere between an hour to maybe an hour and a half you can be in the water before you're going to go into the hypothermia and start losing your ability to even lift your arms and stuff. So it's really important, first of all, if you do go in the water, if you've got a vest on, at least you'll be up on the surface, okay? It's real important to be really careful what you're doing when you're out there, because you can get in trouble real fast. And I think most of you probably don't go and say, before you go out and say, you know, this would be a really great day to have a mishap. Yeah, I mean, you don't think about that. So what do you have to do? This isn't like a lot of people do. They go out in the pond, no big deal. well, you can always get to shore, nothing's really gonna happen. You get out in the ocean and all of a sudden things can go bad fast. So you need to make sure that you get prepared ahead of time, so you're not caught out there and all of a sudden thinking, like the guys I saw about, year before last summer, guys were out there fishing, and of course, they were all prepared, two guys in about I think it was an 18-foot boat, and they were about 8 miles off of in Nantucket Sound. You couldn't see any water, nothing like that. Fortunately, it was a pretty warm day in the middle of the day. And some fishermen came up to us, we were out on patrol, and said, hey, I don't know, but there was a boat out there, way out there, and I don't know if they had a problem or not. Well, we went searching, we found the two guys out there, and of course, what did they have? Oh yeah, I got a cell phone. Both of them had. One guy forgot to charge up his cell phone before he got on the boat. The other one dropped it accidentally and shorted out. So they were sitting there for about 3 hours, floating around, not doing really a lot of fishing, and until we came in there. And they just lucked out that we came up on time. It was getting like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. If it had been dark, it would have been, would not have been great. So, one of the things is, you need, if you possibly can do it, you need to have a marine radio. Okay, the other thing you need to do is, if you get in trouble, one of the first things you really should be doing is going on 16. That's the emergency channel. Let the Coast Guard know. We sit there, that's one of the things they let me do occasionally. I do the radio at Station Shadow, and we have this Rescue 21, which is nationwide, basically both coasts. And when somebody is on 16, 9 times out of 10, it's going to pop up on their screen. We have towers, and they do a line of position where they cross. We know that's where the boat is, and we can get in with what, 280, something like that.
Yeah, it's about 100, 150 yards.
Yeah.
And that's immediate. So, two, if you go through and you don't get a response, if you hold it for a 10 count, it'll automatically show up. And that's going to give you a little more time. So, it'll just narrow your position down, and it gives somebody the chance to see it without even able to hear it.
So it's really important right away. You're in trouble. At least get them to know, okay, there's a problem out there, rather than waiting until it's totally out of hand, and then all of a sudden either you lose your electricity or whatever it happens to be, and then you're in trouble. So real important. The other thing is that if you have, I broke down and I bought a brand new radio a couple of years ago, and what I had was pretty new anyway, but this one has the GPS on it. So I can automatically, if I hit, that little red button that they have, the emergency thing, it's going to put out a signal. I've already had it registered, so it knows who I am when it goes to the Coast Guard, and will tell exactly where my latitude, longitude is. So it's instantaneous, okay? But the key thing is, a lot of people now, it seems lately, they call it, they get in trouble, what do? They do 911. Well, that's really good, except the police aren't in the water. And the other problem is, if you're talking, remember, with a cell phone, it's direct, party to party. So nobody can hear you. If you're on a marine radio and you're on 16, people are going to start picking up that you're there. And that's really important, because sometimes they may be there and be able to help you out right away. Yep.
Actually, I want to make 2 points on that I learned from you when you did my boat inspection. First of all, everything you're saying is applicable whether or not the people in this room are boat captains. Because if you go out as a passenger on a boat with a buddy or on a charter, knowing all these things is just as important if something happens. I got to experience that last year. As far as the cell phone goes, there was a person on my boat who picked up their cell phone and called 911. I called on the radio that Bruce made me have for the inspection, and it was actually a Good Samaritan captain who came to our boat first and got my friend off and got him into Chatham way before I could have and way before these guys could have helped just from that one call.
So it's really critical, on different things you can to prepare yourself and give yourself a better chance of surviving. Because as I said, and things can happen real fast. So that's one of the things. The other thing is make sure.
Just a quick
Yeah.
question. If you're monitoring on 16, you don't
Yeah.
know what boat is monitoring. You have to hold the mic down. I think this is the important thing. You have to hold the mic down, gobbledygook talk, and that's how you'll pick up destination on where the location is.
Right,
correct,
yeah. If you're not on the phone, if you're
Right.
not on
So you gotta
and
hold it.
transmitting, we have no idea where you are.
And what's that length of time to hold the mic down?
Well, there's a
So
saying.
if you're talking on the radio and somebody can't hear you, it's to do it like 10 count, they say, to at least have the position come up, and they'll notice it, because it's gonna triangulate your position off the towers.
I got you.
So,
Yeah, and we've had that situation with a couple of the people, we had one, I think it might have been last year, where a person was a Freedom boat, and they had a really nice boat, I don't know, it was a 25 or 30-foot boat that they had rented, with their MasterCard, and they were out and they called us, and they said, we need help, and I go, okay, what's the problem? Well, we really don't know where we are. I said, well, where are you? The Atlantic Ocean? I don't really know. And so finally, well, do you have a GPS? Yeah, but I don't know how to turn it on. And it went from bad to worse. And so finally we just said, just keep on talking on the phone. Let us see, okay, now we know you're in Nantucket Sound. But that's what happens. You get in there and you're not prepared. So anyway, the other things, a couple of the other things, real important. And we're just kind of going over these things kind of quickly. But anyway, remember with the hypothermia. So make sure you're dressed. If there's a problem, somebody's in the water, you want to get them out of the water as soon as you possibly can. It's also nice to have, I have a couple of these throw bags, but it could be just one of the rings with a line on it. So you can toss it out. This has got the polypropylene rope, which means it floats. And then you can grab, and then you can pull them in. Again, be real careful because you want to pull them in towards the back of the boat because engines and propellers don't do well with people. So you want to make sure you pull them off to the side, away from stuff. But this is a good thing to do. The other thing is what we have when we go out. We have these what they call search and rescue vests, and among other things, which are some of them are really important. We have, of course, things like a strobe. That's really important. You get lost out there, you can have this strobe, and like with mine, I've got Velcro on it. I can put it right up on this, put it right up on my shoulder, and so people can see me as that starts flashing. Also a mirror we have, and that could be, this is like an official mirror, but you could use a CD and do the exact same kind of thing to flash to try to get a hold of people. The other thing, we have stuff which you wouldn't necessarily, we have a dye pack. So if we're in the water there in daytime, we could smash that dye pack and it will put out a spread, a color out in the water so we can be spotted easily. The other thing, we've got tethers. If your boat, let's say, capsizes or whatever, the first rule is don't leave the boat. You stay near the boat. If you've got people, tie yourselves together so that way when you're looking for someone, it's just about impossible to see someone in the water. If you've got 3 or 4 people, it's a lot better. And if you've got a boat, even if it's capsized, it's a heck of a lot easier than a person. So you want to definitely stay with the boat. Then another thing, if you guys go offshore at all, you really need to have a PLB, the personal location, what do you call it?
Beacon.
And, that will then send off your latitude, longitude. It gets picked up by the satellites. So you don't have to be like with a cell phone in cell phone, area, their range. They'll pick you up at, 30, 40 miles off. It's still gonna pick it up on the satellite and then send them where the location is. Real important to have one of these things.
I think that one you just showed activates when you fall in the water, right?
Some of them activate right away. Same thing with the strobes. Some of them activate as soon as you go in. Yes?
What do you think about the Garmin in-reach stuff?
It's probably, do you know anything about that?
I don't know a ton about it. We don't use it personally, but I have heard good things from it, and a lot of people are going that way. But
Good, that's all we have.
yeah, is that what you have? All right.
Well, that
Yeah,
like,
I mean, the technology now is so good. I mean, really anything is better than nothing for stuff like that. And then kind of just to hit on it, obviously we're showing you kind of equipment that we carry. Who here wears an inflatable PFD? Anybody? So you guys know if that's on the boat, you have to be wearing it to like count as a life jacket, right? It's not going to inflate by itself. So it needs to be on your body to cause that PSI for it to inflate. Those are great if you don't have one or would be interested in them. I mean, when you're fishing, you're the closest to the water you'll probably be all day. So that's always big. And then for the hypothermia thing, if you go in the water, most people are not going to be going out buying one of these anti-exposure coveralls. But one thing that can help is just the heat escape lessening position, right? So it's tucking your knees up to your chest and wrapping your arms around your body. The more you try and swim, the more you're just going to push that heat away from you. And then, like you said, if you can stay with the boat, get out of the water. Get up on the boat, climb up. There was a guy several years ago, right out of Saquatucket, forgot a bolt plug in right outside the harbor.
Oh, jeez.
He flipped it, and he was able to climb up on top. He was in the water for a couple hours and survived, like late in the season, like November. It was like right before he put it away for the season. So if you can get out of the water, you're gonna keep that heat a lot longer. So something to think about.
Just a couple other things is things like this, which I don't really care that much about, but this one is the electronic, instead of having a regular flare. But, for the life of me, I don't know for sure, especially daytime, I don't know if anybody really knows so much. A regular flare, you can see that much better than this. The nice thing about this is that if they do a boat inspection, you're supposed to have 3 type of flare types of things. This would qualify, and then you have to have one of those day flag in order to meet that regulation. The other thing that I'm trying to go to, and of course, things are nice. If you've got one of these, things are great too. Especially around distance, obviously these go up 80 feet or something like that. The visibility you're going to see from a much longer distance. Obviously, it's only going to be up in the air for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or something like that. So obviously, any of these, whether it's the hand flare or any of those, if there's no one possibly anywhere near you, there's really no point in you hitting the flare because nobody's going to see it. So you probably want to keep so that as soon as you hear somebody near you, you can hit it and then they would know. A couple of other things.
Can I just ask, if
Yes.
you happen to just see a flare out there, what do you,
Call
how do you report
the
it?
Coast Guard right away.
Yeah,
So
so
you're saying you call the Coast Guard, is that, you go on 6 now?
yep, on channel 16. So do you guys all monitor channel 16 when you guys are on the water? Yeah, most of you. And then I know a lot of the guys around here, when they're fishing, they'll be on like channel 68. But if you go on channel 16 and call the Coast Guard, when you first see it, they'll walk you through several steps to determine how far away you are from it, the color to determine if it is distress, or they also do training areas. So they might be putting out at that time they're doing a training area, they can tell you, okay, you're in that area. And so that's how we would determine. They'll tell you to put your hand out like you're holding a coffee cup on the horizon. And then when you stack your hands, each finger is about 2 degrees of elevation. The higher you get, the closer you are to it, because you're almost seeing it from underneath, right? If you're at, 48 degrees or something. Yep.
Regarding VHF radios, I read some time ago that very few owners of VHF radios have their DSC, digital, select calling hooked up.
Yep.
And is there, what can you tell us about that?
So it's not required to have it. It is something that just about every radio you buy, I just bought a boat. I went out and got one on like Amazon for $100. They all come with it now. A lot of people just don't want to run the wire up to their T-top or something. But you do have to register it. It's going to be an MSI number. So you have to go on, register that part.
Yes, with Homeland Security, you get a number, and that number lives with that radio forever. If you swap the boat out, you have to do something to cancel it, or
Yeah,
So-
you have to send the radio back, and they can reset it. But you can't, but the key is if you go and spend the money on that, to me, I spent an extra, I don't know, $50 or something like that to have the radio that already had the GPS in it. Because my prior one, I had to run, it was like 5 wires, I had to run from the radio up into the GPS and hook it up. So I decided to get lazy and just buy a radio that already had the GPS in it.
well, the built-in VHF have that with the little red tab that you.
That's right, yeah, yeah.
And I informed my wife if I'm ever there flopping around like a half-dead mackerel on the deck, lift this little tab up. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah, it's real quick. And now just a couple, we all said as far as that goes, so it's really a good idea to have that. And by the way, you are supposed to, if you're out in the water with a radio, you're supposed to have it on 16 and all monitoring, except for the times where you go off channel to talk to someone. But you are supposed to be having it on 16 all the time, just as a protection. Now, the other thing I think it's really important, and we've had situations with this, is if we always carry in our boats now, we carry a what do you call it? A combat, a tourniquet. We always carry one of those because they, back since the Vietnam War, they realized tourniquets saved an awful lot of lives. And they're easy to use, and they don't cause permanent damage like a lot of people think they used to think they did. And they're basically, the tourniquet, there are 4 places, like the SEALs, they have them sewed into their combat uniforms. Here, right there. Those are the 4 places you put a tourniquet on. And the combat tourniquets are ones, they have the piece that you have to crank to get it tight. It's made of either metal or extremely hard plastic. Because in order to use a tourniquet properly, you're cutting off the blood flow. And you're only going to use it where you can't stop the blood flow. So the person's bleeding out, you put this on, and you put it on so tight, it's extremely painful to the person, but it keeps them alive. They can reattach everything. It used to be the myth was, oh, you lose the arm or whatever. No, that doesn't happen. Matter of fact, in a lot of operations now, in the operating room, they do that to put a tourniquet on to prevent blood loss as you're doing the operation. So, simple thing to do. They're there. Obviously, if it's a head wound, don't put a tourniquet here. And the other problem is if you have a wound, a tourniquet will not fit. So, I always carry something like this, and it's just simple, one of these medical self-adhesive tape, cheap as can be. You can get, I think it's 16 of them for $10 at Amazon. And it's 2 inches by 5 yards. That'll even fit around me several times. So if you have something like that, you know how you would want to put pressure on a wound, to try to prevent it from keep on bleeding. You can pop that on and then just wrap real tight and keep that pressure on, and obviously try to keep it so they don't bleed out. And you know how it is, if you're out fishing, I've had it happen to me, I sliced my hand open. You know, if you're not careful with your knife, you try to get a fish that's flopping around, you know, it can happen. So you want to have something simple like that, and you can at least stay out and fish a little bit longer before you go in. Yes?
Bruce, what's in the box that you held up first, next to the blue? If you
Oh,
can
this
see?
thing right here?
Yeah, what's in that?
All it is a boarded gauze.
Oh, so it's, okay, got it, yep.
So it just sits in there, it's basically just a wrap, slap it on, then you just put this thing, wrap it around there, and it's gonna hold the person at least for a while, so they hopefully won't bleed out. So, couple things, these things are simple, and it could be, again, I have several medical kits I have. I've got thing if I have to do breathing on a person, CPR, and what else do I have? Okay, flashlight, my son gave me. The new flashlights are just unbelievable. Some of them are really pretty strong. And they also, you know, go through the whole routine where they will, you know, flash, and you can do SOS, all that kinds of stuff. So it's a real simple thing. Have it in, whether it's at night or in the day, and you might be able to raise somebody. The horn, of course, now the horns now, you probably have seen it. The one I have on my boat, it's a manual horn. And so I don't have to worry about whether the gas is still in there. It just pumps out and it's really loud. So I have that. I've had that for a couple of years now and it's still working well. And I think,
Fire extinguisher?
what's that?
Fire extinguisher, is that what you want?
Oh, well, we could do fire, I can bring those in.
No problem.
Yeah, fire extinguishers are probably a good thing. And remember, most fire extinguishers, even the bigger ones, you're not talking about you're gonna fight a forest fire. The average amount of time in a fire extinguisher lasts for about what?
A few seconds.
How long?
15.
Yeah. 10 seconds, 20 seconds at the most. So all they are is to get the pathway out from where you are from the fire and get off to the side. You know, so don't plan on fighting a fire, especially if you've ever seen a fiberglass boat. It's not really good. So you want to be, especially if you've got a cabin, it's just to get yourself out of the cabin and get into a safer place.
One of the big things with all the safety gear that we talk about, typically the only person that knows where any of this stuff is when we do a boarding is the operator. So one thing I always tell them is like, if you have people coming on your boat, pick at least one person to explain what you have on your boat, show them a couple things, because the worst thing that's going to happen is the operator goes down and then nobody knows where anything is. You see it all the time. You're like, oh, where are your life jackets? And everybody's like, oh, my dad never told me. And it's like, where you're now digging through a boat trying to find his life jackets that are up for it under 10 people that are sitting up there drinking. Yep.
Will you guys pump your suddenly in charge class that you're
Yeah,
doing?
that's right. We have several classes. Matter of fact, I brought some of cards besides the boating safety course. And this is how I got, you know, dragged into this. You know, I'm the civilian part of the Coast Guard. Unfortunately, I can't understand it, but I can't carry an M16 on board. I was thinking about a .30 caliber on the thing that would look cool, but I can't. So I don't do any law enforcement at all. I try to just kind of help out people, try to help out the Coast Guard in their mission because they got plenty of, you know, on their plate as it is. So one of our key things besides the vessel checks, and those are really important to get the vessel exams. Make sure you have the right equipment on, so you're not going to be in that situation where going, oh crap, what am I going to do now? You know. The other thing is we do boating safety classes. That's how I got worked into this thing. I was been boating for like 30 years, thought I knew everything. I took the boating safety class and I had like 5 safety gaps I had no clue, I didn't know anything about, and it was a serious problem. That's how I started to learn and, to do the training. The other thing that we're doing now, besides the boating safety, we have like 5 classes that are out. In the boating, by the vessel exams, by the way, whatever we find in your boat or not in your boat, it's just between you and us. We don't tell the Coast Guard, we don't tell the police, we don't tell anybody else. If no record is made of it, you get a copy of what we've made, that's it. It doesn't go past me and the boat owner. So it's just a way to get you safe, okay? Now, as far as, what I was going to tell you.
Suddenly in command.
Oh, thank you, suddenly in command. The other thing we have is we've discovered that it's usually the boat owner who drives the boat. Everybody else is kind of a passenger. If his friend or his wife, in my particular case, is lucky enough to go out on my boat, which she hates to do, if something happened to me, she'd be in serious trouble. So the Suddenly in Command is a course that we offer several times during the year. Matter of fact, I think we have one coming up in about 3 weeks. And it's for people that are going on and all of a sudden something happens to the person driving the boat. You don't want to be there and go, I have absolutely no idea what to do. This will teach you just basic things like, where's the compass? GPS, how do you turn that on? How do you turn on the radio? How do you talk on the radio? Simple things like that, and then we'll go into some other things, but key things, just trying to get you into a spot where you can at least get help in trying to, help out that person. The other thing, just a couple other things real quick. Dehydration. If you've been out on a boat, you can get dehydrated real fast, especially as the weather gets warm. You're bouncing around. It's amazing how quickly you can become dehydrated, and sometimes that can cause problems. So just be aware of that. So you should always have some water on board. The usual types of things like sunscreen and all that other kinds of things. Another thing, you should always have a float plan. And a float plan is basically, I tell my wife, even though she doesn't listen to me half the time, I'll say, I am going to go out at such and such Bass River, and I'm going to go out to wherever, Monomoy, and then I should be back at about 3. Now, she knows when I say 3, it could be 5 or 6, but she would only start to get concerned with me once I passed that, 3 hours after what I said I was going to do. So you get a float plan so somebody has an idea where you were supposed to be going, and so if there's a problem and you're overdue, we know where to have the Coast Guard start looking for you, okay? That's a float plan. The other thing is the 1/3 rule. All of you should know, right? The 1/3 rule is having to do with fuel. 1/3 of the fuel to get to wherever you're supposed to go, 1/3 to come back, and then 1/3 in case there's some other situation that comes up. Okay, so that's always be in the back of your mind, that 1/3 rule. Have enough gas so that you're not out in the middle of the ocean all of a sudden with no fuel. What else? And as far as just a quick one, be aware that whatever you do on the water, in the operation of your boat, also transfers right directly to your driver's license. People do not realize that. And so, if you, let's say, are doing negligent operation with a motor vehicle, gross negligent, that is, if it was in a car, you could have a loss of license, depending if there's a death or not, up to 10 years with jail time. Same thing with a boat. You go there and let's say you hit somebody in the water, that's going to go on your driver's license also. So you're gonna get that same kind of thing, and it's a criminal, can be, if it's gross negligence, criminal offense. So if you're doing 45 miles an hour in, let's say, a mooring field, that's gross negligence. If you have somebody riding on your gunnels, or up on the bow, sitting over their legs hanging over, that's negligent operation right there, too. Now, that could be just civil, so it may only give you about a $2,000 fine, but if it's gross negligence, they decide, then you're talking criminal charges, and you're also, of course, all of that's going on your driver's license with all of your insurance. And you guys have seen this, right?
Oh, yeah.
And including having way too many people on board. Yeah, right, we've seen boats, right? You've seen probably boats where, you know, they've got a 16-foot boat and they have like 20 people in the boat, you know?
Send them back to the beach and they're gonna be doing trips,
Yeah.
bringing people home, but.
Yeah, and if they wanted to be nasty, they'd be charged, you know, with that. And of course, with the Coast Guard, not only that, but just remember, they're a federal agency. So even though marijuana is legal in Massachusetts, marijuana in your boat is not. And if they really want to be nasty, they could be charging with a federal crime. And then you get the pleasure of also having to spend some money doing federal courts, which are a lot cheaper too, right? Yes,
What's the minimum requirement that you need on a, say, 10-foot inflatable to go into Cape Cod Bay?
So, 10-foot inflatable, I honestly have to look it back up. I know that you're required like an all-around white light. You wouldn't be required a fire extinguisher because it's gonna be a detachable fuel tank on it. If you're going outside of any harbor, you're gonna be required flares, so you're gonna be required at least 3 flares. Life jacket for each person. You're still gonna need a throwable, so a Type 4 or a life ring, whatever. And then a sound producing device, so an arrow.
Almost the same as a regular boat then?
Just about. Really, the only thing that you probably are getting away with is the fire extinguisher. That's going last, but if you stay inside the harbor, you wouldn't require the flares. That'd really be the only difference.
As fisher people, why, I thought this was a genius recommendation that you made last year. Why should I always have a pair of wire cutters on my boat?
yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. Safety question that you gave me the answer to, so I think you know the answer.
It's only because I learned my lesson, right in the middle of a tournament, catching all sorts of fish, and then I caught the barb right straight through my hand, and it was not a lot of fun. You know, you just can't fish well. And fortunately, my friend happened to have some clippers that we could actually snap it off and then back it out. And so it did mess up my tournament, but that's okay. Yeah, so, you know, these are different things that you just need to think about. And, you know, instead of afterwards saying, oh, man, why didn't I think of that before?
I think that's one of the cool things about having you do the boat inspection is you come with the list, but you always have new information that you share that's not on the list. And, you know, hey, think about this, maybe do that. If you're fishing all the time, carry these 2 things that have nothing to do with the list. So it's a great service you guys provide.
Yeah. And again, it's things we see, people, it's not like we're, you know, brainiacs or something. We see this happening with other people and they go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yes,
You call the Coast Guard, the auxiliary, who do you call for the inspections?
you would call the auxiliary. And I've got some cards here that I will leave here. And again, as I said, it's free, there's no charge. And we just go through your boat, tell you what kinds of things are on, and as I said before, we don't report it to anybody. It's just a, you know, service to try to get you to be safe.
A couple of things. One is that Bruce's son, my boat, and he did an excellent job. He pointed some things out for me that made me better prepared. And as far as the barb through the hand, I have a picture right here of my finger with the barb in it. And I went down to Harbor Freight, and I think like $10. They have a bolt cutter that's real small, and now I have one. I had one on my boat. I sold my boat. But, you know, you can get one for about $10. You keep it right in the, you know, right in your pool kit.
And it's well worth it, right?
Yeah, you're not kidding.
do you have anything to, I've been doing all the
No,
time.
you're good. So the only other thing I would say, we were talking about the rips earlier and going down and fishing there. For us, even where we're operating on the bar a lot, the like Pollock Rip and the south tip of Monomoy, honestly, is one of the most dangerous areas that we'll operate in. So weather is key to that. You'll see when the rip is running and you have a wind out of the east, it'll start picking up pretty good. And then the other thing is you'll see a lot of boaters down there. Like we've had a couple guys now that have flipped their boats. They come out from like Maryland or something. They come up for vacation, bring a 17-foot like whaler behind them, and they're out there because that's just where somebody told them that's the best fishing spot. And they'll start backing down on a fish or something, and they'll put it right into those waves. Like 4-footers will come over the stern. So I mean, watch out for each other, but also just kind of think about that when you're out there. Watch the weather and pay attention because the weather down there can turn quick. So.
And matter of fact, that's probably the place I got closest to being thrown out of my boat was at Monomoy, right at the south tip there. And they were running, the fish were there. We were going through the chop, and it was really, really choppy. Waves were coming from like the west, because southwest winds. Some heavy waves coming in. And as me and my buddy are fishing on the sides, and my boat's a 22.5-foot center console, pretty heavy aquasport. It doesn't move around a lot. And we had a road wave that came from the south. And I didn't see it coming, and it just hit our boat, flipped it. I went over, just about totally over on one side. My friend was on the other side. Both of us trying to scramble to try to pull ourselves back in. And I've never been in that situation before, but it was just one of those things. And it was, I just saw that thing coming. It was like a 3 or 4 foot wave that hit us from sideways. And so, you got to be careful. That's one of those things. So,
Be prepared, right?
yeah.
Classes that you mentioned, how do we find out about them, or where would you?
I've got some, what do you call it? A card that's got the QR, so you can actually go either that, or you can go on to the Chatham, Chatham Flotilla, and look it up that way too. But we've got a bunch of offerings, and I'll tell you, it's and suddenly in command, it's not just for, it's also for some of your kids. If you've got kids that are out with you in a boat, the 10, 12, might be a good idea for them to at least have some idea in case they have to jump in case, something happens to one of us,